Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about empowering data teams with DevOps automation strategies for modern analytics. And our sponsors today are Databricks and Opsera. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from Fern Halper with TDWI. And after Fern speaks, we'll be joined by Andres Zuniga with Databricks and Krishna Ravipati with Opsera for a panel discussion and presentations. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, please allow me to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long, and at the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. So if at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can click on the Technical FAQs area and you'll receive technical assistance. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. Lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or if you'd like, you can share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing automation strategies for modern analytics, and our first speaker is Fern Halper. She's the Vice President and Senior Director of TDWI Research for Advanced Analytics. Fern is well known in the analytics community, having been published hundreds of times on data mining and information technology over the past 20 years. She's also the co-author of several dummies books on cloud computing and big data. Fern focuses on advanced analytics, including predictive analytics, machine learning, AI, cognitive computing, and big data analytics approaches. Fern's been a partner at industry analyst firm Hurwitz & Associates and a lead data analyst for Bell Labs. She's also taught at both Colgate University and Bentley University, and her PhD is from Texas A&M University. With that, please welcome Fern, and I will hand it over to you now.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, and hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about using DevOps principles for data. So I'm going to kick things off. I'm going to talk about what DevOps is about and how DevOps principles can apply to data and analytics workflows. I'll also talk about the current state of DevOps and DataOps and automation. And as Andrew mentioned, we'll hear from Opsera and Databricks with their perspectives, and we'll spend a good part of the webinar in a panel discussion about DataOps. So the first point is that a top priority for companies is modernizing the infrastructure for AI. That platform also has to support data pipelines to move this data. You think about AI, it requires diverse data types. It has to scale. And so when you're thinking about the pipelines, the diversity can introduce complexity into the pipelines, being different formats and latencies and volumes and quality. All of those data concerns have to be accounted for in the processing. So this chart comes from a TDWI data and analytics survey. We run one of these every year, and we ask the same question. And that question is, what data management tools does your organization use today? And you can see that at the top of this chart. And you can see that relational database management systems is at the top there, with about 55% of the respondents using that. And then, of course, if you look down to the next bar, of course, organizations are making use of data pipelines and data connectivity tools, which we'll talk more about. And if you look at the platforms that they're using to manage the data, you could see that the data warehouse in the cloud is number 3 under pipelines, with close to 50% of the respondents saying that they use that. That's actually more than the data warehouse on premises, the data lake in the cloud, and the data lake on premises, which if you keep looking down the chart is less than 20% at this point for that data lake on premises. Now, if you're looking down, the side there, you can see that the data lake house, like the Databricks data lake house, that platform, the respondents, close to 30% of the respondents were using that type of platform. And we've seen that number really grow over the past few years in terms of when we first started asking about data lake houses. The reality is that people want a centralized repository to manage their data. And also the reality is that some organizations are moving this way, but as you can see in this chart, what they're facing a lot of times is a hybrid environment. If you look at all of the platforms that are on this chart, that becomes clear. So this is can be a complicated environment depending where you are. for everyone, including the data engineers. If you think about the data sets are ever changing. The data people are dealing with fragmented ecosystems. They're facing data governance challenges. It can get messy sort of dealing with this data. So the idea is that using some DevOps principles can actually help with data operations. So what's DevOps about? Some of you may or may not be aware of DevOps. DevOps is used by software development and IT operations to automate, integrate, and streamline the process of building and testing and deploying and monitoring applications, right? Think about software engineers building these applications. And so really it's a paradigm that's used in building and testing software. It's about delivering high quality software. So here I have a definition that says it's a collaborative approach that unifies software development and IT operations, because you want to work collaboratively. It also involves automation, continuous integration and delivery, and real-time monitoring, and that it works by creating an integrated workflow where the code is built, tested, and deployed automatically. So we'll talk more about automation, but I highlighted that there. That's going to enable faster iterations and reduced errors. So you think about the DevOps process, you're planning what you're going to build. So you're putting the requirements together, you're developing it, so you're writing the code, you're building the application, maybe you're compiling the code, you're testing the code, there may be unit testing or performance testing. You're going to release it, you're going to deploy it into operations, and you're going to operate it in production, and then you want to monitor it. So it's about that process, it's about tools, it's about a cultural and organizational shift, because it emphasizes shared responsibility and end-to-end ownership. So some of the principles include things like collaboration, which I was mentioning. So the idea in DevOps collaboration is that you want to break down the silos between development and operations and other teams that are involved in the process to encourage shared responsibility. It's also a key principle is also about continuous integration and continuous delivery, what's known as CI/CD. If you think about frequent code integration and automated releases, so continuous integration is going to ensure that the code changes are automatically tested and merged into a shared repository, often multiple times a day, so that's going to reduce integration issues and accelerate the production. Continuous deployment or delivery automates the release of the tested code into production or staging environments. So you're minimizing manual handoffs that can often increase errors. I also have here that a key principle is about monitoring and feedback. So using real-time observability to catch issues early and enable continuous improvement. And then I put here security integration. So the idea of embedding security throughout the pipeline instead of treating it as a final step. And then of course, we're going to talk about automation. Another principle in DevOps is around continuous learning and experimentation. So again, back to that cultural idea where you want a culture that's going to promote innovation and resilience and so on. So those are some of the principles of DevOps. Now, DataOps, I'm saying here that the same principles can be applied in data. So DataOps is a collaborative data management practice that applies Agile and DevOps principles across the data lifecycle. So you think about the data lifecycle, from ingestion and integration to analytics and delivery. So the idea is that by using these principles, you can improve the speed, the quality, the reliability of data pipelines by using tools that automate workflows, enable continuous testing, and also help with cross-functional collaboration between those people involved with the data, the data engineers, the analysts, the operations teams. So some of the same principles, as I think you're getting the idea now, some of the same principles can be applied that are in DevOps to DataOps, so for example, cross-functional collaboration, on the DataOps side, as I was saying, you want to align the data engineers, analysts, data scientists, the people who are involved there in terms of automation. Here we're talking about automation of pipelines in data ops. So you want to automate the ingestion and transformation and delivery of the data to minimize manual effort and error. I have CI/CD here, so we can think of continuous integration and deployment for data. So you want to treat the data pipelines in some ways as code, and you're going to have frequent updates to those data pipelines that have to be tested. I have infrastructure as code versus data versioning. So with data versioning, you want to track and validate data changes to make sure that you can ensure data quality. Things like monitoring and observability on the data side, ensuring visibility into lineage and freshness and making sure that data is accurate and complete and the performance is there. You could see I have security integration on the DevOps principles, governance, and compliance, so ensuring privacy, security, and regulatory compliance across the data lifecycle. And then, where in DevOps, we're talking about continuous improvement. Here we can talk about sort of lean and agile processes with iterative development, et cetera. So I think you're getting the idea about, what data ops is about. And I called out things like collaboration and automation and continuous improvement. So I want to share some of the TDWI research with you on these topics. So a few years back, we built a data management maturity model at TDWI. And you can still see it. It's on our website under Think. And we've been gathering data from this assessment ever since. And so what I did here was I pulled out the late 2024, 2025 data from this assessment, which that data accounts for hundreds of responses. So I wanted to get an idea of what respondents are currently saying about the topics around data ops and DevOps. So I'm going to show you examples of this. So this first one here is around collaboration. So and I have here, it probably needs to improve across the board. So here we asked respondents about whether they have methodologies that foster collaboration between everyone handling data. So this includes developers, data engineers, data scientists. So it gets to the collaboration aspect of data ops. And you can see here that about 40% of the respondents, that's the bar there on the left, say that they don't have methodologies that foster collaboration. And then that middle bar there, that's at about 50%. They're saying that we have some methodologies, but not a lot of methodologies. And only about 10% say that they have methodologies that foster the appropriate, what they think is the appropriate level of collaboration for data management. So a little ways to go there. Likewise, here's another question about whether data ops or DevOps are in place that can foster the principles that we were talking about: reusability, automation, and continuous improvement. And you can see here that close to 35% said that they have no DevOps or data ops teams in place. So the rest are thinking about putting it in place, but you could see that only about 10% on the right there say that their DevOps or data ops team is focused on continuous improvements. So organizations, as they start to mature, they're going to need to start building these teams because, right now only about a third have them. So there's room for them in organizations that are building out their data foundations. And second, they need to start making use of continuous improvement practices and automation, which actually gets to this chart here about automation for data pipelines. So, which obviously data engineers are concerned about. And you can see what's happening here. About 40% have no data pipeline, or they're only batch pipelines. Those are the ones on the bottom, if you add those bars together. And only about 10% say that they are really automated, and the rest are saying that the scale and automation may be added. I think that's on the top there. So, manual pipelines remain a challenge for organizations, and we see this in other TDWI research. And with manual pipelines, comes errors, and errors aren't necessarily a good thing. So that's what data ops is about and where we are right now with it. So hopefully I've helped to describe what it's about. and how it ties to DevOps and how it can be important. So what I'm going to do is hand it over to Andrew to introduce our Opsera and Databricks speakers who are going to provide their perspectives, and we'll discuss how to put these principles into production in our panel session, and we'll hear more about how Databricks and Opsera are enabling data teams to scale AI and analytics through automation, collaboration, and intelligent operations. So with that, let me hand it back over to Andrew to introduce our speakers. So Andrew, over to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Fern. That was a great presentation. And yes, it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker today, Andres Zuniga with Databricks. Andres is a senior scale solutions engineer at Databricks with experience in designing and implementing complex platform solutions. He has developed a strong expertise in guiding enterprise customers through the successful adoption and optimization of Databricks technologies. He leads initiatives to help customers activate and leverage new features within their Databricks environments. With that, please welcome Andres, and I will hand it over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Fern, for that amazing presentation. Nice to be here. My name is Andres. I'm part of a team internally in Databricks called Shared Technical Services. I think the keyword here to understand what I do and how we help customers is scale and shared. So that basically means that I work with multiple customers at the same time, helping them implement their use cases, driving feature adoption, basically. So what that means is that I'm constantly working with customers. And one of the main tendencies that I've seen lately is that everyone is trying to implement CI/CD in some way or form, be it for regular projects or for data projects or for ML ops, for example. So I think this is a really good conversation, and it's really nice to be here. Thank you, Andrew.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Andres. And please allow me to introduce our next guest speaker today, Krishna Ravipati with Opsera. Krishna is a seasoned data and analytics leader with over 19 years of experience driving enterprise scale initiatives in data engineering, business intelligence, and AI/ML integration. As head of data engineering and analytics at Opsera, he leads data strategy and platform modernization to deliver measurable business value. Please welcome Krishna, and with that, I will hand it over to you now.
Hello, everyone. Opsera is an AI-powered DevOps platform that accelerates and secures software delivery. A key innovation is DataOps for DevOps, which brings software engineering best practices to data teams. Our flagship solution, Unified Insights, built on Databricks, provides end-to-end visibility and actionable intelligence across the software development lifecycle. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you so much, Krishna. Now it's time for us to jump into our panel discussion. So I'll ask that both Fern and Andres rejoin us. And Fern, I will pass it over to you to begin the discussion. Fern, it looks like you're still on mute. If you don't mind trying to restart for me.
I didn't get off of there. Sorry about that. So saying thanks, Andrew, and welcome to our panelists. I'm excited about the conversation. So let's get started on it. So the first question I have is, I've been talking about DevOps and DataOps, and you guys were talking a little bit about it. So I want to get your perspective on how DevOps principles can be effectively adapted for data engineering and analytics, given the unique challenges that data teams face, which I only mentioned sort of briefly, compared to software development teams. I was talking about DataOps and DevOps and how they contrasted, but didn't necessarily, dive into some of those challenges, because when you think of software development teams, you think of, what their process is, which I outlined, but I want to get your opinions on some of these unique challenges. So Andres, first over to you. What do you see as some of the unique challenges?
Yeah, thank you, Fern. Actually, the way that we were able to come up with the answer to this question is that we detected a set of challenges and pain points that customers face when they are talking about implementing a DevOps strategy and practices for their data projects. And those pain points are here. So let me actually go one by one and explain what we mean by those. The first one here on the list is actually skill misalignment between the DevOps process and the data teams. What that means is that traditionally the DevOps practices usually rely on deep expertise in things like infrastructure, scripting, automation tooling, areas where in reality data teams typically don't have enough experience or proficiency. Their focus is on SQL, on analytics, on data modeling, ML, not really managing CI/CD pipelines or cloud infrastructure, for example. So that's one of the first pain points that we detect. Now the solution, and really what we've been seeing so far as in the market, really has been solutions that are either no code or really low code for orchestration and management of processes like automation, for example. From the Databricks perspective, we really advocate treating data workflows like any other software project, which is, I think, what you were saying on the presentation, right? We have all of this research that shows that for regular software processes and projects, that organized CI/CD process has been of huge help for the developer teams. So why not bring it over to data teams as well and data projects, right? So by treating data workflows, data projects the same way that we treat any other software project, then we can apply these repeatable DevOps patterns, right? Like CI/CD, environment promotion, testing, manual checks, manual approvals, in a way that basically aligns with the skills and the responsibilities of these data engineers and data practitioners. So I think that's the main perspective from the Databricks side, but we also have the perspective from the Opsera side and how they have implemented this on the platform. So Krishna, can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Opsera operationalizes this concept with a no-code, low-code orchestration platform. Through intuitive interfaces and drag and drop functionality, data teams can design, deploy, and monitor pipelines without writing scripts or managing the infrastructure. This eliminates the dependency on DevOps specialists and empowers teams to deliver insights with greater speed, autonomy, and reliability. Over to you, Andrew.
Awesome.
Andres.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's basically for the first pain point that we see here on the list. The second pain point, I think it's also related to the same thing, and it's steep learning curve. We also understand that making a change is not easy. This means that, as we already stated, right, this traditional DevOps processes requires deep knowledge on things like infrastructure, platform, scripting, tools that aren't really connected with each other. Skills that often fall outside of the core strengths of the data teams, who are focused on working with data. So the learning curve is also a consideration here. That means that we need to find a way to avoid users and people working in this, in trying to implement these processes. We need to find a way so that they can kickstart the implementation, right? So that they have assets, they have pre-built templates, integrations, as Krishna was saying, things like drag and drop, right? Something that's really easy, really intuitive. So from the perspective of Databricks, we are really supporting customers to move into some of these automated processes, and also implementing best practices like going from development to staging to production, making sure that the products that they are developing, the data products, are of quality, basically, and then by mirroring that software release lifecycle that we have seen in I guess, traditional software development projects, we basically encourage this disciplined operational practice and, get the benefits, get the efficiency out of that. Krishna, maybe you can give us your perspective on this pain point. I think you're
Sorry,
on
Krishna.
mute.
It looks like you're still on mute.
I'm back. Okay. So Opsera accelerates adoption with a no-code, low-code platform featuring pre-built integrations for Databricks, source control systems, and testing frameworks. With reusable pipeline frameworks and templates, teams can deploy end-to-end DevOps workflows quickly with minimal ramp-up, eliminating the need to build and maintain custom automation scripts. Over to you, Andres.
Awesome. Okay, so the third pain point here in the list, tool chain fragmentation. And this is something that we see not only in DevOps, we see this pretty much in anything that involves data. It has been a really bad history of implementations up to this point, where just now, with the integration, for example, platforms like Databricks, we are now seeing that more and more things can be done in the same platform. So now we are avoiding this fragmentation, this disconnect between different tools. And furthermore, with these DevOps projects that we are now implementing, it's not doesn't have to be the rule, right? We need to also improve and connect these DevOps tools into the same environment, into the same platform, so that everything is basically working in the same place. So basically what this means is that we now have a structure, automated progression through different stages, and those stages, everything will be managed within the same environment, the same platform. So now we can enforce best practices, now we can improve governance, now we can maintain control over the cycle, we can get observability, we can monitor. So basically by having a unified platform, not only for what we are executing and what we are doing, but also for things like the DevOps, the automation, the CI/CD, this allows us to have more control and a simpler view on what basically we are doing in those projects. I think Opsera has a really interesting view on this as well.
Opsera complements this with a unified orchestration platform that integrates tools across the DevOps ecosystem, source control, testing, deployment, monitoring, and more. With built-in support for security gates, approval workflows, and planning tool integrations, Opsera ensures consistent, scalable, and policy-aligned DevOps processes across all data projects. Over to you, Andres.
Perfect. So continuing here down the line, the fourth pain point is operational overhead. And this is something that we hear really often when we get customers trying to implement these processes. They say, we don't want to overload the backlog of the admins or the platform engineers or the DevOps engineers. How do we manage maintaining these complex data pipelines, this complex infrastructure? How to avoid making things manually? How to avoid that effort and slow innovation? And basically the response to that, the solution is to implement automation, right? Which is what we've been discussing so far. Automation and scalable deployments. Basically what we already said, treating data projects like any other software project, basically allowing teams to maintain velocity, consistency, observability of their projects, not only their current project, but also basically define a framework that they can then reutilize for future projects as well. So that it doesn't matter how much volume they have for projects and how much volume they have of things executing in parallel, they always have that framework that they can attach to, and they can avoid that operational overhead. Over to you, Krishna.
Okay. Opsera takes this further by automating the deployment and management of data pipelines. Its scalable orchestration engine eliminates manual interventions, reduces operational burden, and allows data teams to focus on delivering business insights, not maintaining infrastructure. Over to you, Andres.
Awesome. And then for the last pain point that we detected during our conversation is that we have, after implementing all of these processes, all of these recommendations, we have customers, we have seen users that they have implemented a process successfully, but they basically lost focus on what they really need to focus, right? We are still data engineers, we are still data analysts, we are still data scientists. So we need to focus on the insights, we need to focus on the outcomes of the projects that we are implementing, right? We should avoid drifting away from the analytics, from the models, from delivering the business value and the intelligence that the business requires from us. So, of course, we need to shift back to analytics. We need to shift back to the results and to the outcome-based projects, right? So the idea here is that once we are able to implement a project the correct way from the CI/CD perspective and the DevOps perspective, then we are able to not only manage the projects, as if we would have done it manually, but also now we can start focusing on things like efficiency, right? So now we see life cycles, object promotion, data promotion, high quality data products. So we are focusing on the outcome rather than the process. We understand that the process is important and the process is going to take some time to adapt and to actually see results. But once the process is there, once the automated framework is there, data engineers, data practitioners shouldn't see or shouldn't have to worry about that. It should be invisible to them. They shouldn't have to worry about what's happening. They should focus on the outcomes that they are working and looking for. So, Krishna?
Opsera abstracts the underlying DevOps complexity with secure, compliant, and automated workflows. This allows data teams to redirect their efforts toward core analytics objectives, accelerating the delivery of actionable insights without the distraction of managing infrastructure or tool chains. Over to you, Andres.
And I think that's all of the pain points that we detected for question 1. So again, you can see we are seeing a lot of focus on things like automation, efficiency, collaboration, and the improvements that those things come with. Basically, we are seeing how the market tendencies are aligning with the actual research that we have seen on the presentation so far. So that's really good. So back to you, Fern. We can move on to the next question.
Just drill a little bit deeper into automation and the role that it plays. Well, here's the question, what role does automation play? Because he talked about it, but what role is it playing in a deeper sense in improving reliability, scalability, and governance of data pipelines, like in terms of how Opsera and Databricks can also make this automation intelligent. So it's not just about the automation, it's about intelligent automation. So Andres, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so again, in this case, we were able to detect 3 main pain points that we have seen users and customers of these platforms face. Specifically, the first one I think is really important, and this is technical risk, right? Unreliable pipelines, unreliable code, unreliable data products. Basically, what this means is that if we don't have a process of automation, if we are doing everything manually, these manual workflows, these manual processes will increase the likelihood of human error, right? This is just natural things. We introduce a process of inconsistencies, we create bottlenecks, we have people that may have more access than they need to, less access than they need to, right? So we are seeing things that not only introduce problems in the actual code, but also basically create these bottlenecks that will, again, basically what we said before, add additional overhead to the admins that are managing this environment. Of course, the solution to this is the question itself. So automation is what basically enables these repeatable processes that are predetermined, predefined, that we know that work, that we know that are attaching to anything that we need to set up in place that we know that needs to be repeated every time, naming convention, tagging, those kinds of things that basically ensure that the environment is up to standards. That basically enables us to have that early detection as well of catching model or infrastructure issues before they actually get to production, right? So basically it's before getting into production, being able to detect the technical risk, being able to avoid those human errors, and basically having a predetermined space, a predetermined pipeline that users need to attach to it. There's no way. The only way that they can get to production is by following that process. So that makes it easy for us to implement quality in the products. Now I know Opsera has a good implementation of this, so let us know, Krishna.
Opsera solves this problem with shift-left automation, enabling early issue detection and resolution within the development lifecycle. Powered by Hummingbird AI, Opsera's intelligent workflows automated testing, validation, and environment promotion, minimizing manual handoffs and significantly reducing the risk of production failures. Over to you, Andres.
Awesome. Again, second pain point that we detected, this is more related to inefficient and non-scalable deployments. What this means is, again, if we are doing things manually, we are basically, we need to make sure, or the only way that we can improve the efficiency of these processes is by adding more people, right? Because one person can do so just, whatever so much they can do. There's nothing that we can do on the efficiency of one person. So the only solution here is to add more people. So now we have a 30-person team of DevOps, and that's not the idea also. So by being able to efficiently scale without having to look for more people, look for more complexity, look for more variables in the process, that's going to help us intelligently scale the automation for the efficiency that we are looking for. Automating these critical steps in the deployment process basically reduces the friction between getting from development to production. And that also enables faster time to insight, basically, that help us not only get the information that we want to and the outputs that we want to, but also helps us maintain the quality and the control that we need on those assets as well. So go ahead, Krishna, on this pain point specifically.
Sure. Opsera brings scalability through templatized modular pipelines that can be easily replicated across environments. Reusable components promote governance, consistency, and best practices, empowering teams to scale without starting from scratch or compromising compliance. Over to you, Andres.
Perfect. And then to the last pain point that we detected for this question specifically related to automation is that we also have, when we are working on these manual processes, again, without implementing automation, we get the security, compliance, and governance gaps. What I mean by this is that if we are doing everything manually, we need to make sure that the person that's executing the process knows about the security policies or any compliance standards that we need to attach to. You know, what happens if we need to maybe do some row filtering, right? So that people cannot see the values of a specific column. We need to make sure that we have the right guides and the right material, and then we have, a 30-page guide on how to do something, and that's also not efficient, right? So by implementing automation, and as teams grow, and as projects grow, and as additional projects are down the line as well in the pipeline, we need to make sure that these risks, that these compliance checks, that these permissions and grants and governance, that everything is structured, standardized, auditable, so that we are able to see what's happening, so that we are able to make sure that what's happening is what's supposed to be happening, and so that the pipelines, the models, the outputs basically meet those security and governance requirements before we actually reach production, right? That's why we have those environments before. That's why we have dev. That's why we have staging, so that we can make sure that what gets into production is actually of quality and has all of the right standards, all of the right policies, and that it's consistently attaching to those. So go ahead on this, Krishna.
Opsera complement this with built-in static code analysis, secret scanning, and policy validation integrated directly into the pipelines. Our shift-left security model catches vulnerabilities early in the development lifecycle, enforcing zero trust principles and enabling safer, more compliant deployments at scale. Over to you, Andres.
Right. So for this question, that's the main pain points that we detected. This means that automation, as we've seen throughout the presentation, plays a huge role in these projects. Again, we are seeing those similarities between what we know of regular software projects and what we are trying to bring over to data projects, and those benefits that we get and the efficiency benefits that the customers and the users will get as well. So now that's basically for question 2. Now we'll go to a demo, right, Krishna?
In modern data platforms, DevOps for DataOps enables continuous integration and delivery of data pipelines, notebooks, ML models, and workflows, just like software. On Databricks, this involves 3 key platforms. Databricks, a unified platform to build and run scalable data and AI pipelines. Git, a version control system to manage code, notebooks, and configurations. Opsera, a DevOps platform to automate CI/CD for data and ML workflows across tools. In a typical Databricks production implementation, we will have at least 2 workspaces, one for production and one for non-production. And the code is built and tested and organized in a proper folder structure. Opsera is an AI-powered DevOps platform designed for all teams, enabling faster and more secure software delivery. By extending these capabilities to DataOps, Opsera brings automation, visibility, and agility to data and analytics teams. traditionally reserved for software engineering. All deployment metadata is captured, analyzed, and visualized through Opsera's unified insights layer, enabling continuous feedback and improvement.
Opsera provides secure, standardized deployment pipelines tailored to roles like data architects, engineers, and analysts. These personas-driven workflows simplify deployments across the entire DataOps lifecycle: planning, ingestion, transformation, publishing, and monitoring. With built-in governance and automation, Opsera accelerates releases and ensures reliability on Databricks. We have developed a data pipeline in Databricks Dev Workspace with the code stored in a feature branch. It is now ready for deployment to the test workspace, including all associated tables, notebooks, and jobs. To perform this deployment, we need to set up two Opsera pipelines, one for deploying database objects and another one for deploying workflow jobs. This setup requires configuring Git integration with the Databricks workspaces and connecting both Databricks workspaces and Git to Opsera. We will walk through the configuration steps in the sections that follow. Connect Databricks workspaces to Git for version control. This setup is done through the Databricks workspace UI and must be configured individually for each workspace environment. Log into Opsera platform and launch the DataOps wizard located in the top breadcrumb navigation. The landing page outlines key DevOps for DataOps principles and best practices. Click Get Started with Connections to start configuring environments. Let's configure GitHub tool first. Click Add Connection and select GitHub tool. Provide connection name, repository URL, username, and path token. Click Save and Test to validate and create the connection. Now the GitHub connection is created successfully. Now let's add the Databricks connections. Click Add Connection and select Databricks tool. Enter the connection name, Databricks workspace URL, and SQL Warehouse HTTP path. Select OAuth as the authentication type and provide the client ID and client secret of the service principal. Click Save and Test to validate and create the connection. Ensure the service principal has the required privileges to deploy the code, including permissions to manage clusters, run workflows, and create database objects. Repeat these steps for each additional Databricks workspace you need to configure. All the credentials are securely stored in Vault. Now let's review the repository option. Select the GitHub connection, choose the desired repository and branch to view the corresponding changes from GitHub. SCM operations are currently executed through the GitHub portal. At present, Opsera allows users to view these changes within its UI. In upcoming releases, we plan to enable full SCM functionality directly within Opsera. For database object deployment, configurations are defined in changelog root XML, which specifies the paths to the SQL script files to be executed. For asset bundle deployment, leverage the Databricks.ml to define workflows and manage environment-specific deployment configurations. As the connections are configured and SCM operations are complete, we are ready to deploy the code to test environment. Navigate to Create Pipeline and select Databricks SQL option. This will deploy tables from feature branch to the Opsera test catalog. Select sequential step since we are deploying to a single environment. Select Databricks test and SCM connections. Use descriptive names for the pipeline and each step. Choose the repository and branch containing the deployment scripts. Enter Opsera test as the catalog name, which represents the target environment for deployment. For changelog file option, select the path to changelog root XML. This file is maintained in Git and defines the project structure and paths for the SQL script files to be deployed. Enter master data as the Niquibase schema. This schema resides within Opsera test catalog and contains the changelog table used to validate and track deployment history. Click Confirm to review the pipeline summary, then click on Create Pipeline to create the pipeline. Once the pipeline is created, we can customize to add additional steps. Here I'm adding an approval step. Click Add New Step and enter the required configuration details. After the approval step is added, it will prompt for approval during pipeline execution. Now let us run the pipeline. The pipeline executed successfully and the tables have been created in Opsera test catalog. The tables have been deployed to the Opsera test catalog, but they are currently empty. To populate them with data from test data sources, we need to deploy and run the job workflow. Next, let's create a deployment pipeline to promote the job workflow from dev workspace to test workspace. Click Create Pipeline, select Databricks Assets, option to deploy workflow from feature branch to Opsera test branch. Choose sequential step type since we are deploying to a single environment. Select Databricks test and SCM tool connections. Use descriptive names for the pipeline and each step. Choose the repository name and branch containing the deployment scripts. The YAML path points to the databricks.yaml, which defines the workflow code and the environment configurations for deployment. Example, dev test prod environments. This file is located in the specified path within the Git repository. For target, choose test as we are deploying to test Databricks workspace. Click confirm to review the pipeline summary, then click on create pipeline to create the pipeline. Now let's run the pipeline. The workflow was successfully created and executed, and the corresponding tables have been populated as expected.
Really interesting demo. Thank you. So now we know how this can be done. Our research shows that manual pipelines are a top concern. So, how do we know that we're ready? What we saw in the other data that I was showing was that not a lot of organizations were doing DevOps. So what are some of the common signs that data organization is ready for DevOps, and what are some of the early wins that they can try to obtain? And Andres, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, I think a key sign of readiness is when those data teams move beyond building the pipelines. They are, no longer, they have done it so many times already that their focus is not on building. They now need to focus on efficiency. Not only efficiency, but also reliability and also scaling, right? How do we scale this efficiently so that we, no matter the number of projects that we are doing at the same time, that we have the same efficiency and the same reliability. I think that's the main sign of readiness, when they should start thinking about DevOps and when they should, start implementing and start doing some research on this. If these manual processes that, perhaps are trusted and give the right results, but they increasingly limit the delivery velocity of your projects, and also not only that, but also impact the data quality and the outputs of the projects, then it's time to automate, right? I think this inflection point often coincides with the rising complexity in managing environments itself, the deployments, the dependencies, different projects working in parallel with each other, and different teams, collaboration required. So I think this is the main sign, the main indicator of when they should start looking into automation, into CI/CD, into DevOps, and DataOps and MLOps, and these automation practices basically. I know that Krishna also has a good analysis here for this concept. So over to you.
Sure. To add to what Andres said, right? DevOps readiness often emerges when teams feel the pain of inconsistency, slow feedback loops, and scaling friction. Some of the specific indicators: frequent firefighting due to pipeline failures or environment drift, inability to track deployment status across fragmented tools, recognition that manual operations hinder agility, security, and compliance. Some of the early wins that we should target to actually gain the DevOps momentum within the organization: start with CI/CD for data pipelines, environment standardization, unified observability, policy-driven governance. Starts slow and then crawl, walk, and run. Over to you, Andres.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty much in line here, not only between us, but also with the research that we've been discussing so far. And there is a point where the users might need to see more efficiency, and that's when they should start looking into this. So I guess that's the question, the answer to this question.
Yeah, it brings up another question. We're talking about collaboration and whatnot, and so the teams often struggle with visibility and collaboration also. So now we know when they're ready, but if they're struggling, how does embedding DevOps into data workflows help improve observability and cross-functional alignment and, importantly, trust in data? So, Andres, how about you take that one first?
Yeah, I think you're pretty much on point. There is, I think the main thing is, and I think you mentioned this, but basically operating in silos, right? And when I say silos, I not only mean platform silos where you are using different platforms disconnected with each other, but also team silos, right? Where we see no collaboration whatsoever between teams. Everything is disconnected. They have, some type of process that when one team finishes, the other takes over, but we don't have any communication. We don't know what's happening. And basically what that does is that makes it difficult to align the engineering portion with the results portion. And as you're saying, right, that basically removes the trust in the data products and doesn't allow us to diagnose issues quickly. From the Databricks viewpoint, basically what we have here is this focus on process-driven automation, right? By embedding these DevOps principles that we've been talking about this whole presentation into the regular data workflows, whatever, if it's data engineering, data analysis, data science, we will allow teams to follow a structured, auditable process that basically allows them to get into production in an organized manner, and also that defines the collaboration processes and the platforms that they are using and how they use it and how, which rules they need to attach to as well. So each deployment adheres to predefined stages, validations, access control, governance, right? Automation will handle everything. So you don't need to worry about that. All of the configurations of the environment, how big should my cluster be in production against development, right? Those kinds of decisions, all of that will be handled in the predefined process. That's why we took the time to actually configure that. Everything will be logged. Everything will be traceable to individual contributors, individual service accounts, automation, everything is logged. Everything is part of a monitoring and observability platform. And also this structured approach basically boosts the trust of these products and the processes itself, and also allows us to reduce friction between teams and the cross-functional alignment between different teams, different platforms. This collaboration concept, I guess, it's really important. Maybe Krishna, you can tell us more about the Opsera's viewpoint.
Sure. Opsera takes it further with centralized observability across the entire data DevOps lifecycle, real-time visibility into pipeline performance, policy violations, and deployment health. Metadata is correlated with Databricks pipeline logs to surface contextual, actionable insights. Hummingbird AI drives proactive operations, suggesting or triggering automated remediations, enabling self-healing workflows, and minimizing downtime. Some of the key benefits that would include faster root cause analysis and resolution, stronger governance and auditability at scale, proactive reliability and trust in data products, and cross-functional transparency across data, dev, and operation teams. Over to you, Andres.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and I think we're pretty in line here. So yeah, no, thank you for your viewpoint. So back to you, Fern.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one last question. I see we want to leave some time for audience Q&A. So the last question, I have to bring AI into this, but looking ahead, how do you see the convergence of AI? And everyone's also talking about real-time analytics and then DevOps, in terms of what the future of modern platforms looks like. So Andres, how about you take that one again first?
Yeah, thank you. And I think you bring a really important topic to the table, which is AI, right? Databricks, basically, we have this concept of the data intelligence platform, right? We have your data, which is the portion, that's what you own, that's what you know, that's your bread and butter, that's what you use every day. And then we have the intelligence portion, right, which is AI. How do we enhance the processes? How do we enhance the results? So, of course, AI, of course, ML, of course, automation processes, and being able to integrate this idea of artificial intelligence into your platform and into your processes will give you a lot of results. And from the perspective of Databricks, we look into a future where the boundaries between data engineering, data analysis, data science, AI, everything is just data work, right? We are working with data. The actual process, is going to change. The actual code is going to change, but the process that we follow to deploy, to manage, test those projects and those deployments, those data projects that we are working on is the same. The same code structure, the same compute configurations, the same collaboration platform. And I think that's really important. We are looking into the same platform where we can do pretty much everything. And what we need is something. Basically, what we need is to think about the automation, CI/CD, the DevOps, right? How do we take all of these important projects, all of these amazing outputs, so we can get all of this insight that we can get from AI and ML? How do we take that? How do we get real value out of it, right? How do we build? How do we scale? How do we innovate faster, allowing us to focus on the outputs, focus on the outcomes of the projects, rather than the process? And I think DevOps, CI/CD, that's a huge part of this, and that's basically what allows the efficiency to skyrocket in this project. So over to you, Krishna.
At Opsera, we bring this vision into practice by integrating real-time telemetry across the DevOps lifecycle, from code and CI/CD to security and production. Our AI-powered engine enhances developer productivity by detecting bottlenecks early, predicting failures, and surfacing actionable insights automatically. We're also pioneering an insight as code approach, allowing teams to declaratively define metrics, service level indicators, and KPIs as reusable components, turning analytics into scalable, governable assets. Powered by our partnership with Databricks, we deliver low latency, trustworthy analytics that form the backbone of a truly data native DevOps culture, where software and data delivery become faster, smarter, and increasingly self-optimizing.
Great, thank you. Andres, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to what Krishna said, but if not, I do see that we have some audience questions. So what I want to do at this point is hand it back over to Andrew for our audience Q&A. But thank you both very much. Really interesting discussion and demo. So Andrew, back over to you for that.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you all for that great conversation there. We do have some questions for the audience. I think we only have time for one, unfortunately. We're a little short on time here, but let me ask this question. Andres, I see you, so I'll go ahead and ask it to you first, and then we'll see if Krishna, you would like to jump in as well. So the question is, as organizations adopt intelligent orchestration and AI-driven automation, how can they measure the ROI and the maturity of their DevOps for data initiatives?
Okay, so let me just give a really quick answer. I really want to give the mic to Krishna to focus on this, but I would say that the main indicator here for how to measure ROI is not focus on the traditional metrics that you're used to, right? Because now we are working with more abstract concepts, right? We are talking about efficiency, which efficiency is going to give you, less execution, quicker turnaround, faster deployments. But then, how do we actually measure efficiency? We need something to compare it to. So, there's actually a process of adoption where we need to look at the right metrics and the right process. And at first, it might look like we are not moving forward, but I can assure you that on the mid and long term, this is going to be a huge game changer for your company. But I think Krishna can probably provide more insights from the perspective of Opsera.
At Opsera, we believe that measuring ROI and maturity in DevOps for data initiatives requires a combination of quantitative metrics and operational insights. Our platform is built to make these indicators visible and actionable from day one. Some of the key ROI indicators that we look for are faster cycle times from development to deployment, increased deployment frequency with fewer failures, reduced mean time to recovery, and manual efforts, improved developer productivity via AI-driven automation. The maturity signals we always look for is shift left practices for early detecting of issues, unified observability across tools and stages so that they have the full visibility on the entire practices. Ultimately, intelligent orchestration is not just about automation. It's about building a repeatable, scalable, and secure foundation for data-driven innovation. With Opsera, teams not only automate, they accelerate and measure their maturity with confidence.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you all. Unfortunately, we are out of time today, but please allow me to thank our speakers. We did hear from Fern Halper with TDWI, Andres Zuniga with Databricks, and Krishna Ravipati with Opsera. Would also like to thank again Databricks and Opsera for sponsoring today's webinar. And please remember, we did record today's webinar. We'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can locate the resource window to download the PDF. And finally, for those unfamiliar, TDWI hosts in-person educational events, and our next one is in San Diego, taking place August 18th through the 22nd. As a valued webinar attendee, we're offering each and every one of you $100 off any event package. Please check your post-webinar communications for a unique discount code and a link to further details. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's event.